Coming up now, we have Serhii Yakimuk, who is engineering manager at Elex, and his title of his talk is Hyperautomation in Practice. And he will finish at 4:30, and Chris will be back in the room to round things up at that point. Okay?
Hello.
Over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Richard. I hope everyone can hear me. Yeah, it seems like it's working. Thank you. So I think my talk today, which is Hyperautomation in Practice, it actually is connected to what was just being discussed on the panel, which I like because it's like a nice finish for today's day. And just in general, I hope you still have some energy for the last talk before the drinks. I'll try to make it brief. So just to be on the same page first, what is hyperautomation? A lot of hype is around this buzzword, let's say, in the late few years. It was originally introduced by Gartner, as a lot of terms nowadays. But what I want to focus here your attention is basically it's just a holistic approach to automation inside of your enterprise organization. So it's about looking around, identifying and evaluating all of the available processes that exist in your organization and trying to implement some automation and obviously extend it with some AI, machine learning capabilities as much as you can. So one of the risks of not implementing it, especially if you have an enterprise that has a lot of legacy software, a lot of legacy processes inside of it, is basically things are more manual, they take longer than they need to take, and they are more expensive. So because this is hyperautomation in practice, I would like to talk about a specific example that we had in our experience. So this is about our collaboration with Drugs, who is, probably you know, is one of the biggest UK energy companies. So Drugs recently, as a big enterprise with a lot of legacy software, they have organized a special dedicated hyperautomation department that is looking for the opportunities inside of the organization to automate things and to improve processes. So they have a number of projects in their portfolio as of today. I will focus just on one that I think is mostly relevant. And just a disclaimer, I will mention a number of technologies that we were using on this project. It doesn't mean that I'm an investor or anything in those technologies. That's just the fact that we are using them together with Drugs to achieve the results. So the example that I have chosen, I think it's most representative from what they have currently in their portfolio. And I think it's the pain that a lot of enterprise companies feel, because that's what you have to deal with on a daily basis. Almost every company has to deal with this. So this is about account payable process, and not to focus too much on the many details on these diagrams. You can see that there is this poor ledger assistant in the middle who is responsible for a lot of interactions throughout the whole process of getting information from the supplier and paying them with the ERP in the end. So they had to manually interact with the shared mailbox. They have to communicate back to the supplier with all of the different problems or rejected invoices if something has happened. They have to upload manually to a folder. They have to use a legacy OCR service, which is not working very well, not always capturing all the data that we need, and so on and so forth. So the problem statement here, I think, is quite clear. And just from looking at the scheme, we already had our assumptions, what is wrong and what is happening here. But applying the practices of hyperautomation has helped us in a certain way just to clarify our business case and to show exactly the value of the changes that we were proposing. So how actually does it work? Again, I will mention a few technologies here. That's what we were using for the project. Doesn't mean that this will be the best fit for your case, but I think it's just some food for thought for you to maybe apply similar or even this tech to your enterprise. So the first part of it is obviously research. And we've heard a lot today about you shouldn't rely on consultancies, right? That will just come in and tell you, you know, you that shouldn't work like that. You should rebuild it completely. We have all the knowledge. Here are 10 million graphs that we have produced in the last months. So that's what you should do. So this is an inverted approach here. So what we are using here is a process mining tool, which is ScanAI. And what's interesting about it, that it's actually using computer vision to analyze what your users are actually doing. So how the setup works. All you have to do is to install a special agent on your employees' workstations. You have to get a few, let's say, training or sample recorded processes, and you have to identify where is the start of your process and where is the end of your process. So all of the other magical stuff is happening inside of this ScanAI platform, which allows you to identify what actual actions your users are taking. And important part about it, you can also identify which of the applications are related to the process and which are not. So for example, you can ignore like Teams messaging, right? Because it's not related to your process or something like that. So this information that gives us, that process mining gave us, we then can use to leverage and select the automation platform to use. At Drax, we are using a number of low-code, no-code automation tools, mostly low-code. It's Power Automate and SnapLogic. And for this specific project, we have used Rosum AI, which is basically a very smart document processing system that will help us to automate this solution as much as possible. And I'm really pleased that we had a lot of mentions of engagement of your workforce throughout the day. I will not stop on this too much because we talked about it very, in other talks quite a lot. So it's really important to engage with your employees throughout the process. All of these activities, all of these automations, they should understand that it's not the replacement of them. It's just an additional set of tools that they can use in their work. So just a few additional points about process mining and what kind of benefits do you get from it. So first of all, you get continuous and unobtrusive observation. You don't need to go and interact with your employees in terms of user interviews, asking them questions. What do you actually do? How do you proceed with your case when you receive a new invoice? You can observe everything from data. You get a lot of AI and machine learning generated insights. We will look at a few of them later on. Important question or point that was raised previously in other talks is security. So you are not uploading any information to any of the LLMs or whatnot. You keep all of the information inside of your organization. It is analyzed on-premise or on your cloud infrastructure, whatever you like. And as I mentioned, you can separate non-process and process-related actions, so you just capture what you need, and you can even anonymize the data, right? So you don't know which exact employee is doing this, right? You're just looking at the big picture. So in the end, what this can give you, it's something like this. Sorry for the low-resolution screenshot. Apparently, it's very hard to get a good one. But what you can get in the end is a data-driven, real process map. So not something that was created like years ago in Confluence or SharePoint and is probably not maintained for a long time, but what actually your employees are using daily. What kind of actions are they clicking around? And you can look at this data as a generalized, very dashboard-like style, or you can drill down up to a single case. When you see some kind of a deviation or a bottleneck, you can actually look what kind of impediment that employee has encountered and analyze what can you do about that. So even if you stop at this moment, like if you don't proceed with any other automations on the way, this might be very helpful and beneficial for your teams. You can create documentation based on this. You can plan your capacity. You can see where you need some potential training for your employees because they struggle or they are stuck at some point. I think it's very, very powerful. And for our cause, we were mostly focused on trying to identify the points that were taking a lot of time, right? So our idea was, let's look at actual use of the tools, and some of the results are quite surprising, right? So because this is very communication-heavy process, a lot of the time that people were spending was actually in Outlook. So they were trying to find that relevant invoice in the shared mailbox. They were trying to compose a message to write back to the supplier that something is wrong, and so on. And the second point here is this legacy OCR software. It was not working very well. It took a lot of time, a lot of even continuous iterative efforts to try and get a proper result. So another thing that was mentioned previously is like, how do you convince your executives that you need to change something? I think having something like that, having really data-driven information that, you know, we have this process, this is how it actually works, and we see that these specific points can be improved. That's very helpful in that regard. So after that, data has been analyzed. What we decided is to make basically two major changes to the platform. I will not go into reasoning why we selected specifically this platform or not, because, you know, it's a whole different conversation, but just for you to understand what was chosen. So the main difference between the previous slide that described this process and this one, if you look at this ledger assistant role, they should be much happier now with this new process. They just interact with the Rosum AI in cases when there are some undecided cases, when AI is not confident enough to tell if it's, this specific invoice is good or bad. And just to emphasize, if you are changing the process, it doesn't mean that you have to rely on AI tools only, right? You have a hammer and you want everything to be a nail, right? But in this specific case, it was decided that it makes sense to just introduce a small custom bespoke add-on written by real engineers to have some additional validations for the process. So yeah, I will not stop on all of the points. So it was separated into phases. The first one was mostly AI-based, around training and employing this Rosum platform. And the second one was just adding on top of this some additional validations and additional capabilities for the state management of this invoice. And just honorable mention about training the AI model. I think this is just real examples from our initial batches for this training model. What is important when trying to automate things like that is having enough data, right? So that's why it's beneficial for you to go and pick a process in your organization that is well established. It's not like you designing something new from scratch. You have something that you have a lot of data already. So you can leverage that data to train your AI quickly and get to your target confidence threshold. And a few constraints just to keep in mind. People often forget that it takes time to actually train these things. Just knowing in advance what kind of information you want to capture helps a lot. And obviously, documents need to have some kind of repeatability. If you have a supplier that changes their template every time they send you an invoice, this just wouldn't work. So yeah, a few numbers up there that are marked as opportunities for now, because this project currently is in deployment stage, so people are starting using it. And good thing about process mining is now we can actually check and compare the data from what we had with the previous process that used those legacy systems and what we can have now with this ability to leverage AI and ML stuff. So yeah, just a few additional points here regarding supplier relationship and transparency. Everything is more streamlined. We have a clear process, and it should just give us more confidence in what is happening around our invoicing process for our suppliers. So yeah, as I mentioned, this was like a general theme across the whole day, and I really liked it. Sorry? Oh, thank you. Just for you to know that another way to look at this problem of how do we make everything work in conjunction between technology, process, people. You can look at it from the lens of so-called socio-technical theory. I read a lot about it recently. I really liked it. And one of the terms that it brings up is joint optimization, which is basically about equal consideration for technical and human elements whenever you design these social or technical changes. So what we often do, as a lot of people mentioned already, we just forget that we should do this for the people, not just to replace the people. So we should engage with our employees. We should always try to give them opportunities to find themselves the benefit that they will get from the change. Because otherwise, we will end up in one of these negative scenarios, right? If we don't have enough commitment from our teams, from our subject matter experts, if we just don't give them enough time to use this technology, to get used to it, we can end up in the situation where, well, basically you don't have these long-term benefits, right? You end up either at the same stage or even worse. Like a real-life example from one of the first POCs that we did was that the person who was actually doing the job was not involved at all in the process. So what ended up happening is that person didn't trust the new system at all. So what they did, they received some automated results, and they went and checked everything manually after that. So actually, we ended up even in the worse situation than before. Obviously, this is amendable. You can do it, like you can improve it over time, but it's important to keep in mind, if you do it right away, it's much easier to have this long-term benefit. And one last point that I wanted to make is, again, not everything should be automated, right? If we just focus too much on automating every step of the way, what we can end up doing is just automating confusion. No one is actually sure how this thing should work in the end. Like, it's just a bunch of automated processes connected together. So, yep, that's it from me. Thank you.
Thank you.